In the heart of a high-tech alien metropolis, an unexpected moment unfolds. A human janitor, a figure of silence and obscurity, is caught in a rare, joyful exchange with the wheelchair-bound child of the galaxy's most powerful alien billionaire. But when the mother arrives, her eyes burning with unspoken power, she witnesses something that could alter everything for both of them. Before we dive into this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If this sparks your curiosity, hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's episode is even more unbelievable than this one. The Grand Hall of Empress. Thalria's estate gleamed under the lights of 1,000 floating luminaries. The marble floors were polished to perfection, reflecting the intricate designs of alien architecture that stretched into the horizon. In the midst of it all, Elias, the human janitor, moved unnoticed, a ghost in a world where his kind didn't belong. His uniform, faded and worn, barely matched the splendor around him. The grand halls, filled with alien diplomats and emissaries, rarely acknowledged him as he swept away dust and debris, his presence invisible to all. Yet, it was in these moments of solitude that Elias found solace. The hum of the vacuum drones, the gentle scrape of his mop on the cold floor, were familiar, comforting sounds that kept him grounded. But that day was different. As Elias worked his way past the grand pillars, he saw her. The Queen's daughter, Rhea, was sitting in her ornate wheelchair, her green skin glowing under the soft lighting. Her wheelchair was more than a tool. It was a throne of sorts, decorated with alien runes and advanced technology, designed to provide her the comfort she needed in a body that refused to cooperate. Rhea, with her sharp alien features and sorrowful eyes, had long been the unseen child of the Empire, hidden away from the eyes of most. Yet in this moment, their worlds collided. Rhea's eyes met his, and for the first time, she offered him a tentative smile. Elias hesitated, unsure, but something in the way she looked at him softened his resolve. Slowly, he bent down to her level, offering a hand. Without words, he began to move, leading her in a dance, slow and unpracticed, but filled with a sincerity that spoke louder than any words. They twirled in the middle of the hall, their movements a stark contrast to the sterile, cold environment around them. The rhythm wasn't perfect, but the laughter that escaped Rhea's lips, soft, pure, unburdened, was a sound Elias had never expected to hear in this place. A moment of humanity shared between two unlikely souls. The sound of the door creaking open cut through the moment like a sharp blade. Thalria stood in the doorway, her dark eyes wide with surprise. The billionaire empress, known for her icy demeanor and impenetrable walls, froze. She had walked in to witness something that she never thought she would see: a human janitor dancing with her daughter, the very child who had spent her life hidden away in her gilded cage. For a split second, time stood still, the tension in the air thick. The janitor looked up at her, a quiet realization dawning in his eyes. This moment of connection, this simple act of kindness, was not something that could go unnoticed. But the Queen's gaze wasn't filled with anger or disgust. Instead, it was filled with something else, something more dangerous, more captivating. The tension in the air thickened as Empress Thalria's gaze remained fixed on the janitor and her daughter. For a moment, Elias held his breath, uncertain of what would come next. The music of the moment, the dance between him and Rhea, suddenly felt out of place in the cold expanse of the alien palace. But then, the Queen's eyes flickered, not with anger, but with something far more unsettling: curiosity. Her gaze swept over Elias, studying him with the intensity of a predator sizing up its prey. Elias had spent years in the shadow of this empire, cleaning the floors, scrubbing away the remnants of others' grandeur. But this was the first time he had felt seen. The power of the Empress was undeniable, her reputation known across the galaxy as the ruthless ruler of Threxion, a being whose presence alone could silence any room. But here, in the quiet of the grand hall, her walls seemed to tremble just slightly, as if she too had been caught off guard by something unexpected. Thalria's mind raced. She had never allowed herself to become vulnerable in front of anyone, let alone a mere human. Yet here, in the presence of her daughter's silent joy, she felt something stir within her, a feeling she had long buried beneath her royal duties and the weight of her empire. Rhea, still in her wheelchair, looked up at her mother. Her expression was unreadable, but the subtle lift of her lips suggested a shift in the atmosphere. Rhea was a child born of the stars, destined for greatness and isolation, yet here she had found something she had not been given in the royal court: genuine human connection. Thalria's eyes softened, though only for a brief moment. She had watched her daughter grow up in the shadows of their world. Rhea, though beloved, had always been treated as an afterthought, never truly seen, never fully understood. She was the royal child, yes, but she was also a burden, a responsibility that weighed on Thalria's shoulders more than her crown. But here was this human, Elias, offering her daughter something far more valuable than the finest jewels in the galaxy. He was offering her respect. In this world, it was rare, almost impossible, for a human to even stand in the same room as an alien of Thalria's stature, let alone dance with her child. Yet, the janitor had done it without hesitation, without fear, as if he understood that her daughter's heart was more important than her status. Thalria's jaw clenched, the edges of her emotions began to fray, and she found herself on the cusp of something she hadn't felt in years: uncertainty. Elias, still standing there, suddenly felt the weight of her stare. He could feel the power radiating off her, could sense the gravity of the room shifting. He thought of backing away, but the expression on Rhea's face held him in place. Thalria spoke, her voice cold but not devoid of intrigue. "You'll have to explain yourself, Janitor. What exactly do you think you're doing?" The words, though spoken with the authority of a queen, didn't carry the expected venom. Instead, they were a challenge, an invitation to reveal something that could change the course of their lives forever. The room remained frozen, suspended in the delicate tension between the unexpected and the inevitable. Elias stood motionless, his mop still in one hand, his other hanging awkwardly at his side. He had never been summoned by anyone of such power, let alone the Empress herself. Every part of him screamed to bow, to apologize, to retreat back into the shadows where he belonged. But something in her gaze, the unspoken curiosity, compelled him to stay. Thalria stepped forward, her presence as commanding as the storm clouds that brood in the heart of a galaxy. Her long, flowing robes shimmered in the dim light, each movement calculated, regal, but for a split second, there was something else beneath it all, something softer, something human. It was fleeting, gone before Elias could fully grasp it. She stopped just before him, her eyes still piercing through him, but now there was something more. A hint of recognition, a flicker of understanding. "You," she said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "You've dared to do what none of my court would ever dream of. You've brought something into my house that hasn't been here in years. Tell me, Janitor, why?" Elias, unsure of the answer, swallowed the lump in his throat. He wasn't a man of words, never had been. He had spent his life cleaning up after others, unnoticed and silent. But something about the way she spoke, her voice steady but laden with questions, made him want to answer. I just wanted to make her smile," Elias said quietly, the truth of his words hanging in the air between them. "She deserves it." The Empress studied him for a moment longer, her gaze shifting from his face to the floor where he had been scrubbing just moments before. She saw the dirt-streaked hands, the worn jumpsuit, the tired eyes of a man who had spent his life in service to the unseen. And yet, here he was, standing before her like an equal. In that moment, she realized something. This was not just a janitor. This was someone who had seen things differently, who lived in a world where power didn't speak the loudest, where kindness still had a place. Thalria tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "You have no idea the danger you've placed yourself in," she said, her voice low. "But I'm intrigued. You've shown a kind of courage I didn't think possible for someone of your position." Elias felt a knot tighten in his chest. Danger, he had never felt more exposed in his life. But there was something about her words, something in the way she regarded him, that made him feel like this was no ordinary reprimand. She was giving him something. An opportunity? A test? He couldn't be sure. Her eyes softened, almost imperceptibly, as she took a step back, her gaze drifting to her daughter, still sitting silently in her wheelchair. "Meet me in my private chambers," Thalria commanded, the regal tone returning to her voice. "We need to talk. If you're truly willing to risk everything for a smile, then perhaps there's more to you than meets the eye." Elias blinked, stunned by the sudden shift in tone. Was she asking him to join her? To discuss? What? "You may go now," she added, the queen's voice final, yet strangely inviting. As he turned to leave, the weight of her words hung over him like an invisible cloak. He wasn't sure what he was about to walk into, but for the first time in his life, he felt like he was on the precipice of something that could change everything. Something beyond the cleaning supplies and mop water. Something far greater than he could have ever imagined. The corridors of the Empress's estate were silent as Elias made his way to the Queen's private chambers. The marble floors that once echoed with the sounds of his cleaning tools now seemed to whisper under his footsteps. The atmosphere had changed. The air felt heavier, laden with expectations. He wasn't sure what this meeting would bring, but he knew one thing for certain. His life had just shifted in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. As he arrived at the entrance to the private chambers, the door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a dimly lit room filled with ancient artifacts, soft tapestries, and luxurious furnishings. The grandeur of the room was subdued by a quiet elegance, a reflection of the Queen's solitary rule. Thalria was standing by a large window, gazing out over the sprawling city below, her back turned to him. The soft glow of the city's lights painted her figure in a muted, ethereal glow. Elias hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to speak or wait. He had never been summoned into such a space before, let alone by someone of her stature. The Queen, sensing his presence, turned slowly, her eyes now focused on him, but there was no trace of the cold, imperious ruler he had seen earlier. Instead, her gaze was weary. "Sit," she commanded softly, gesturing to a chair across from her. Elias, unsure, followed her instruction, sitting down carefully, the weight of the moment pressing on him. The Queen's eyes flickered to his hands, still marked with the grime of his work, and then to his face, where the quiet intensity of the last few moments had left its mark. "I've been wondering," Thalria began, her voice softer now, "why you did it, why you danced with my daughter, why, of all people, you, the janitor, would offer her something none of my court, my allies, have ever dared." Elias shifted uneasily, his thoughts racing. He had never considered the bigger picture, what the Empress might think, how dangerous this act could be for him. He had only acted out of instinct, wanting to see the joy on Ria's face. "She's just a child," Elias said, his voice low. "She's been left alone for too long. I didn't think about the consequences. Only that, maybe. She could feel like someone cared." Thalria regarded him for a moment, her face unreadable, but her eyes betrayed a trace of something else, something like recognition. She stepped closer to him, her voice quiet but filled with emotion. "You're right," she whispered. "She's been a prisoner of this empire as much as I have, trapped by expectations, by power, but I've never been able to give her what she truly needs." Elias looked up at her, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes. A rare moment of honesty that was more than he had expected from the cold Empress. For the first time he saw her not as a queen but as a mother, trapped in the same loneliness and burdens as the rest of them. "I want to change things, Elias," she continued, her voice steady now. "But I can't do it alone. I need someone who sees what I can't, who isn't blinded by power, someone who can remind me that there's more to life than crowns and kingdoms." Elias felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. For the first time, he realized that this encounter wasn't just about a dance. It was about breaking down walls, ones that neither of them had dared to touch before. The silence between them stretched out, thick with the gravity of the Queen's words. Elias shifted uncomfortably in his seat, suddenly aware of how small he felt in this grand room filled with untold power. He had done nothing more than dance with Ria, and yet Thalria's voice now carried the weight of something far greater. "You've placed yourself in danger," Thalria continued, her eyes narrowing. "You think this is just a dance, just a moment of joy for my daughter. But everything in my world comes at a price. Your actions have consequences." Elias opened his mouth to speak, but the Queen held up her hand to stop him. She stepped closer, the power she wielded radiating in every movement. "The factions that circle me, The ones who wait for any sign of weakness. They are watching, she said. You've given them one. They will twist this into something it's not. Your small kindness will be seen as an opportunity to undermine my authority. Elias felt a wave of guilt wash over him, his stomach churning. He had never thought of the political ramifications of his actions. He only wanted to see Rhea smile, to share a brief moment of connection. But now, he realized how naive that had been. I never meant for any of this to happen, he said quietly. I just wanted to make her happy. Thalria's gaze softened for a brief moment before hardening once again. You've awakened something, Elias. You're no longer just a janitor. You're part of something much larger now, whether you like it or not. Her words hit him like a cold wave. He had never seen himself as anything more than a humble worker, invisible in this grand empire. Now, the quiet act of dancing with Rhea had pulled him into a world he didn't understand. There's no undoing what's been done, Thalria said, her voice steady. But how you move forward, how you choose to navigate this will determine everything. You can either be used, or you can help me fix what you've started. Elias stared at her, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He had made a choice, without understanding the consequences. Now, he would have to live with them and somehow find a way to make things right. The air in the Queen's chambers remained thick with unspoken tension. Elias sat in silence, grappling with the weight of the Queen's words. The world he had known, the quiet life of a janitor, was slipping away, replaced by something far more dangerous. Thalria paced slowly before him, her mind clearly elsewhere. Her expression was unreadable, but the lines of worry around her eyes betrayed her true feelings. Elias had become a part of her world, whether she liked it or not, and she knew the consequences better than anyone. I've been watching, she said abruptly, breaking the silence. I'm not the only one who noticed your actions. Elias's heart sank. He had known, deep down, that there would be eyes on him. The dance with Rhea, the rare moment of connection, had been seen. He had never thought about the wider implications of that single act. But now, it was clear that the ripples had reached far beyond the palace walls. Who else? He asked quietly, already fearing the answer. The factions, Elias, she replied, her voice laced with frustration. The nobles, the power brokers who believe they hold dominion over everything, including me. They will use your connection to my daughter as leverage. They see your presence as a threat, and they won't stop until they've turned you into something they can control. Elias swallowed, his mind racing. What can I do? I'm just a janitor. I didn't sign up for any of this. Thalria stopped pacing and turned to face him. That's just it. You didn't sign up for this, but you're in it now, whether you like it or not. And if you want to protect yourself and my daughter, you have to understand something. Elias leaned forward. His curiosity piqued. What is it? You're a pawn in a game you didn't choose, Thalria said, her voice cold but firm. But you don't have to remain one. The question is, what will you do with the power you've unwittingly acquired? Will you let them use you, or will you find a way to turn this to your advantage? The weight of her words settled heavily on Elias's shoulders. The Queen was right. He was caught in the middle of a struggle he hadn't chosen. But there was something more he could see now, something he hadn't noticed before. The Queen, despite her coldness, was offering him a chance to shape his own fate. I don't know how to play their game, Elias admitted, his voice trembling with uncertainty. You don't have to, Thalria replied, her tone softer now. But you must learn to survive it. And for that, you'll need to trust me and yourself. Elias looked into her eyes, and for the first time, he saw not just a queen, but a mother fighting for her daughter's future. He nodded slowly, knowing the journey ahead would be fraught with danger, but also understanding that it was a path he had no choice but to take. Elias walked away from the Queen's chambers, his mind racing with the weight of everything he had just learned. He had come into this world as a janitor, an invisible figure in the background of an empire. But now, he was something else, something larger, whether he wanted it or not. His footsteps echoed through the silent corridors as he made his way back to the quiet of the lower halls. The palace, so grand and distant, seemed to close in around him now. The weight of his duty, whatever that meant, was already settling on his shoulders. He had never been a man of ambition. He had never sought power or recognition. All he had wanted was to do his job, to serve in silence. But now, in the midst of a galaxy-spanning political game, he was caught in a web of intrigue and danger, and there was no going back. A soft sound broke through his thoughts, a quiet laugh. He looked up, and there she was, Rhea, the Empress's daughter, sitting in her wheelchair just outside a door, her bright eyes watching him with a curiosity he had never seen in her before. He stopped, unsure of what to say. For all the tension, all the danger swirling around them, here was this child, this innocent soul who had simply wanted to dance. He had given her that joy, but now it seemed there was so much more he was expected to offer. Rhea tilted her head, her smile a little softer now. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice tentative, yet filled with an unexpected wisdom for someone so young. Elias felt a pang in his chest. He hadn't realized until that moment how much he had come to care for her. She had become more than just a child to him. She had become a symbol of everything he had ever wanted to protect. Innocence, joy, a future untouched by the cruelty of the world they lived in. "I'm just trying to figure things out," Elias said softly, kneeling down beside her wheelchair. "There's a lot I didn't know. About this place. About what I've gotten myself into." Rhea looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching. "You don't have to figure it out alone. You're the first person who's ever really seen me. Not as a princess or a burden. Just as me." Her words struck him deeply. For the first time, Elias realized that he wasn't just protecting a child, he was protecting her future. His actions, however small, could mean something more now, something that transcended his role as a janitor. Elias reached out and gently took her hand, a firm resolve settling within him. "I won't let them hurt you," he said quietly. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect you, Rhea." For the first time in his life, Elias felt a purpose beyond cleaning the floors. He was here to guard the one person who had shown him kindness, and in doing so, he would face whatever came next, no matter the cost. The weight of the palace had never felt so heavy. Elias moved through the halls, his mind clouded with thoughts of the Queen, Rhea, and the dangerous game he had become a part of. What was once a life of quiet anonymity had spiraled into a volatile storm, and he knew that it would only get worse. The factions that Thalria had warned him about were already closing in. Whispers had started, murmurs of a human janitor who had caught the attention of the Queen. Every move he made was now being watched. Every word he spoke analyzed. The stakes were no longer about cleaning the floors, they were about survival. But what could he do? He was only one man, a janitor in a world of powerful beings and political maneuvering. The thought of stepping into the heart of that power, of facing the enemies who lurked in the shadows, filled him with dread. Yet, he knew there was no turning back now. Elias found himself standing outside the Grand Council chamber, where the Queen had called him to meet once more. The heavy doors loomed before him like the gates to an unknown world, and for a moment, he hesitated. Could he really go through with this? Could he play the part they wanted him to play? Or would he be swallowed whole by the very forces that had pulled him into this mess? "Elias," a voice called from behind. It was Thalria, her presence unmistakable. He turned to see her walking toward him, her regal posture unyielding even in the face of the uncertainty they both faced. She paused just in front of him, her dark eyes meeting his with a look that was both calculating and desperate. "Are you ready?" The question was simple, yet it carried the weight of everything that had led them to this moment. Elias could see the cracks in her armor, the vulnerability she had tried so hard to hide. This was no longer about empires and thrones, it was about what she was willing to sacrifice for the future she wanted, for the future Rhea deserved. "I don't know if I'm ready," Elias admitted, his voice rough with the truth, "but I know that if we don't act now, we'll lose everything." Thalria studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly, as if coming to a decision. "Then we'll move forward together. The trial will begin soon, and it's your choice. Play their game, or take control of your own fate." Her words rang in Elias's mind as she walked past him and opened the council doors. Inside, the powerful figures of the empire awaited them. They would judge, they would question, and they would test everything he had come to understand about power. But Elias stood tall, his mind clear for the first time in weeks. He wasn't just a janitor anymore. He had a role to play, a role that could change the course of their lives. With a deep breath, Elias stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. The Grand Council chamber was a sea of eyes, each gaze piercing through Elias as he stepped into the room. The lights above glowed with an eerie, almost reverent quality, casting long shadows across the polished floors. The alien nobles, powerful and ancient, sat in their seats, their attention fixed on him. Thalria stood beside him, her presence as commanding as ever, but Elias could feel the tension between them. This wasn't just a trial of power. This was the moment that would decide everything. Elias tried to steady his breathing. The weight of 1,000 unseen eyes was upon him, each one watching, waiting for him to fail. The space between him and the throne, where Thalria would sit, seemed to stretch endlessly. The council had already whispered about the human janitor, the one who dared to defy the rules, to step into the spotlight. "You have summoned him," Magistrate Varric spoke, his voice like grinding metal. "Now, let him prove his worth. If this human can truly withstand the trials set before him, we will see if he is worthy of your favor, Empress." Thalria's eyes flickered toward Elias. She had said he could play their game, but she had also said he could take control. Now it was his turn to choose. The council wasn't just looking for obedience. They were looking for strength, something beyond the quiet janitor they had dismissed for so long. Elias stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. There was no turning back now. His hands trembled, but he steadied himself, feeling the weight of Thalria's trust behind him. She had given him this chance, and he wouldn't squander it. The trial began. The first challenge was a test of intellect, a series of riddles designed to break even the sharpest minds. Elias listened intently as the first riddle was spoken aloud, his thoughts racing. The answers danced just beyond his reach, but as the others grew agitated, Elias stepped forward, speaking his answer with quiet certainty. The riddle unraveled in his mind, and he solved it as though it were an instinct. A murmur rippled through the council. They were surprised. Some even shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But the trials were not over. The next challenge was a physical one, an arena of shifting, dangerous terrain designed to test one's endurance. Elias stepped into the arena, feeling his pulse quicken as the shifting ground beneath him threatened to swallow him whole. Yet he moved with determination, each step measured and deliberate. He was no warrior, but in this moment, he was more than a janitor. He was a man who had learned how to endure, how to survive. The crowd held their breath as Elias made his way to the center of the arena, his face set with quiet resolve. In that moment, Elias realized something important. The trials were not just about winning, they were about proving that he, a man of no rank, could rise above the limitations others had placed on him. It wasn't about power. It was about the courage to stand tall, to face the impossible, and to redefine his place in this galaxy. The final trial ended in silence. Elias stood in the center of the arena, his chest heaving from the physical exertion, but his mind was clear, focused. The arena had shifted, the dangers now past, and the council watched with bated breath. The Empress stood at the front, her eyes fixed on him, unreadable. The once scorned janitor had made it through every challenge, defying expectations at every turn. For a brief moment, Elias allowed himself to feel the weight of what had happened. He had gone from invisible to undeniable, but the battle was far from over. Magistrate Varric's voice cut through the stillness. "The trials are concluded. The human has faced our tests, and yet," his voice trailed off, a sneer curling on his lips, "there is still the matter of your worth, human. You've impressed us with your intellect, your endurance. But can you truly hold a place among us? Can you prove that your actions weren't mere luck, but something more?" Thalria's gaze never left Elias. She had been watching him with an intensity that matched her usual cold exterior. But now, there was something softer in her eyes, something like hope. He had surpassed the trials, but the final judgment rested with her. "I never asked for you to prove yourself, Elias," Thalria said, her voice steady but filled with unspoken meaning. "But you've done more than that. You've shown me what it means to stand for something greater than ourselves. You've shown me that power isn't just in dominance, but in the quiet strength of what we protect." The room was still, the council waiting for her command. It was a moment that could change everything. Thalria turned toward the council, her voice ringing with authority. "This man, this janitor, has shown us the courage we too often overlook. He has earned his place not just in my service, but in this empire. And I will not let anyone diminish what he has achieved." Gasps filled the room. The council, known for their merciless judgments, hesitated, unsure of how to respond. But it was too late. Thalria's decision had been made. Elias felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. He was no longer the invisible man cleaning the floors. He was something more, something that could change the course of this empire, if only he was willing to accept the responsibility. "I will not pretend to understand everything about this galaxy," Elias said, his voice steady but filled with a quiet fire. "But I know this much. I will do what I can to protect those who need it. That includes Rhea, and that includes this empire, in whatever way I can serve." Thalria gave a small, approving nod. "Then it is settled. The future will not be what it was before. It will be what we make of it. Together." As Elias looked around the room, the faces of the council now held a mix of surprise and reluctant respect. They hadn't expected him to survive the trials. They hadn't expected him to succeed. But now, they had no choice but to recognize what he had become. The new beginning had arrived. And this time, Elias knew that he would not be forgotten.